Today, our biblical story found in Judges chapter 11 is a really hard one that we mostly want to avoid. So for today, we are going to hear the scripture reading, but we're going to hear it through the words of a poem entitled The Ballad of Jephthah's Daughter. The girl was young and slim and fair. Her father Jephthah loved her well. A foolish vow was his despair. Weep for her, O Israel. Once in the days when the Ammonites threatened the people of the Lord, Jephthah heard the call to fight and eagerly took up his sword. Hear, O Lord, my cry, he prayed, as he led his hosts across the land. I can do nothing without your aid. Let these sinners be conquered by my hand. And if you do as I implore, I promise that on my return, the first to greet me at my doors, in sacrifice to you I'll burn. O Jephthah, and your daughter fair, don't you love her very well? In this vow is your despair. Weep for her, O Israel. Boldly he went out to fight, and by the grace of God he won. Then homeward turned and took delight in memories of the deeds he'd done. But look, who meets him on the way, rejoicing with timbrels and with dance? Why does he cry out in dismay, cursing the joyous circumstance? It is his daughter, his only child. She sings, and her face is all aglow, but he shrinks as if from one defiled, and his words are, "You have brought me low." Jephthah, it is your daughter fair. You know you love her very well. Tell us the cause of your despair. Listen, daughters of Israel. Alas, my daughter, Jephthah cries, my longtime joy, my sorrow now. Has ever man been so unwise as to make this solemn vow? She meets his eyes, his child adored. Her gaze is firm, she does not weep. If you have spoken to the Lord, the word you've given, you must keep. One thing I ask, please give me leave to go to the mountains with my friends, there to sorrow, there to grieve, that in its youth my life must end. The girl was young and slim and fair. Her father Jephthah loved her well. He granted her wish in his despair. Weep with him, O Israel. The poor girl flees to the mountains wild, in sorrow to dream, to mourn, to sigh, for an unknown husband, an unknown child. Then she turns homeward, prepared to die. Jephthah, what price your victory? Is it courage, duty, anguish, shame that fills your spirit as you see that slender body lost in flames? The virgin daughters of Israel go out in mourning year by year to lament the grim fate that befell the child Jephthah held so dear. She was young and slim and fair. Her father Jephthah loved her well. A foolish vow was his despair. Weep for her, O Israel. Let me start by stating the obvious. There are some really difficult stories in the Bible. And this is one of the most horrible. And you'll probably have a lot of questions that I'm not going to answer today. There are questions about this story that just don't have answers. And now I have a confession to make to you. I chose this text. It was not in our narrative lectionary. In fact, I'm not at all sure if it shows up in any lectionaries that are available at all. So you're probably wondering about my sanity right now. Me too. I mean, who in their right mind would choose this awful text? Well, let me tell you, when we landed on the theme for this year at Silverwood, hurting, healing, growing, this story came to mind. There's a whole lot of hurting in this story. And I think there's a lot that we can learn from this story about how to grieve well. Truth be told, I did preach on this story once before, a long time ago when I was a 2-year-old baby pastor, I mean. I was a Christian before I was a pastor, honest. But this will not be the same sermon that I preached that long time ago. I'm drawing from that sermon, but I've grown and changed, and so this sermon must reflect those changes as well. First off, let's take a look at Jephthah. I would like to write Jephthah off as a jerk, but that's not quite fair. I think he was foolish, and I think he made some huge mistakes, but he was also human. He was a man who carried some personal hurts, and he became a dad whose decisions led to a life of regret. Jephthah's father was Gilead, and his mother was a prostitute. Gilead married a woman, and together they had some sons, and Jephthah grew up with his half-brothers. But when these brothers became adults, they sent Jephthah packing, saying, "You're the son of another woman. You're not getting any of this inheritance." Well, there's a major hurt, right? Jephthah lost his family, he lost his home, he lost his inheritance. He maybe lost some dignity. Keep in mind that hurt people hurt people. Mary Pfeiffer, a clinical psychologist and author, has said, "Unprocessed pain almost always leads to something much worse than pain." The text says that Jephthah's brothers drove him out. Jephthah fled his homeland, the land of Gilead, his father's name, his father's land, his land, and went to the land of Tob. Now, the land of Gilead is that orange country on the east side of the Jordan River that you see up there. And the land of Tob, it doesn't show up on most maps, and I had to do some research to figure out where it was and add it to this map. It's right there on the edge of Gilead and the land of Ammon. Remember the Ammonites? That's who Jephthah is fighting. In the land of Tob, Jephthah got connected with a bunch of mercenaries. The text calls them worthless guys. Getting connected with some shady people was pretty easy to do in this part of the country. The country of Ammon actually recruited soldiers from this region, which seemed to produce bandits and outlaws for export. Jephthah, in fact, became a leader among this group of worthless guys. So that's a little background on Jephthah. Now you need to know what is going on in the land of Gilead. The land of Ammon has been in battle with the land of Gilead over land rights. On this World Communion Sunday, I'd just like to note that land disputes have been the source of war for a long, long time. And we have people in the world today aching, hurting, living in chaos, dying. thanks to land disputes. At this point in the story, the dispute between Ammon and Gilead has been going on for 18 years. Jephthah had become an expert in leading his group of bandits into skirmishes and forays, so leaders of Gilead sought him out. "Come and be our chief," they said, "so that we may fight the children of Ammon." And Jephthah responded, "Didn't you hate me and drive me out of my father's house? Why are you coming to me now that you're in trouble?" Well, they told Jephthah that they just really needed his expertise. And if he would come, and if he was victorious, they would make him head over all the peoples of Gilead back to his homeland. Jephthah said, "For real? How can I believe that you're going to keep your word?" And the leaders say, "As God is our witness, we will do this." So Jephthah goes. First, he tries negotiations. The text actually spends a good bit of time on these negotiations, but in the end, they fail. So battle it is. Or, for the people who have been living there, continued battle. But before he leads the soldiers of Gilead into battle, Jephthah makes a vow to God. Now, some commentators say, well, they give Jephthah the benefit of the doubt. They say that he is hoping to honor God with this vow. But others say, no, he's shown who he is. He's a negotiator. He's really bargaining with God. It is likely he was hoping to secure his position of leadership. And so this vow was more self-seeking than it was God-honoring. In making the vow, he was seeking to control the outcome. He wanted this power of leadership. And to get that power, he had to win. Jephthah wanted to be in control. His vow was rashly spoken without a lot of forethought. If he was successful, he vowed to offer the first living, breathing creature out of his door on an altar of fire to God. Here again, commentators don't all agree. Some say the word here could have meant an animal, and there is evidence that livestock were cared for in the homes at that time, so an animal could have come through that door. Others say Jephthah's vow most certainly was intended to sacrifice a human being. The vow is spoken. Jephthah leads the soldiers of Gilead to victory, and Jephthah heads home victorious. And that's just about how much time the text spends on the actual battle. And that makes me think that the focus here, what the author wants us to focus on, is not the battle, but it's about the vow. So Jephthah heads home, and who should step through that door, the first to greet the victorious, now head of the land of Gilead, but Jephthah's daughter, his only daughter, his only child, since he had no sons. She comes out with music, singing and playing her timbrel. It's something like our tambourines today. Because that was the joyous way to greet a victorious soldier. But when he sees his daughter, Jephthah is anything but joyous. His words are, "My daughter, you have brought me low." I wish Jephthah's daughter had a name. At least she's mentioned. I wish Jephthah had not blamed his daughter for the anguish he now feels. I wish Jephthah would have blamed himself for making such a stupid vow, a vow that God didn't ask for and didn't want to have kept. I don't think Jephthah knew the one true God very well. I don't think the people of Gilead knew the one true God very well. At this point, the Hebrew people were falling further and further away from the God who had led them out of Egypt through the wilderness to the promised land. Instead, they are moving ever more deeply into the worship of foreign gods. And some of these foreign gods did hold human sacrifice. But nowhere in the Old Testament do we find the one true God endorsing human sacrifice. Nope, not even in the story of Abram and Isaac. God does not endorse it. So let us leave poor, wretched Jephthah now and turn to his daughter. When she learns that her dad made a vow to God, she says to him that such a vow must be kept. But she asks for some time before the vow is carried out. She asks to be alone with her friends for 2 months so that she can go to the mountains and mourn her victory and mourn her virginity. And Jephthah grants her request. The text doesn't spend a whole lot of time on the daughter's reprieve either, but in the brief few verses, she can teach us some important lessons through her request. Lesson 1, name the hurt. Acknowledge that it exists. Take a good look at it. Her hurt is that she is and will remain a virgin. And when we hear this, we can quickly jump to the wrong conclusion that what she is mourning is the lack of a husband, that she will never experience sexual intimacy. But that's not the case. At this point in their religious understanding, these Old Testament people did not have the hope of life after death. For them, life continued on in and through their children. Because she was a virgin, Jephthah's family line, his daughter's family line, would end with her. This is what hurts the deepest, and she names it specifically. Lesson 2, grieve the loss. Jephthah's daughter makes no apologies for her need to grieve, for her need to get away for a while first. She recognizes her need, and she gives herself time and space to mourn. Grieving is hard work. I don't know of anyone who likes to grieve, but it is necessary and it is important work. Unlike Jephthah's daughter, most of us will not know ahead of time when our earthly lives will end. But unless our lives are abruptly cut short at an early age, each of us must someday face the fact that our earthly lives will end. With this acknowledgement comes grief. And there are plenty of other losses in life that also need to be mourned. The loss of a job, the loss of a relationship, people moving away, a friendship dies, divorce, death of a friend or a loved one, a pet, the loss of innocence, a childhood that was less than ideal, a betrayal at the hands of someone you believed to be trustworthy. I'm sure that you have others that could be added to this list. If we fail to do our grief work, we will have to face it at a later date. Most likely when the next event happens that causes us grief. And the work will be harder still because the grief work that we didn't do will not be added on to the next event of loss in our lives. It will be multiplied onto the next event. of loss in our lives. So Jephthah's daughter teaches us an important lesson. Do the difficult work of grieving. Lesson 3, grieve with support. Jephthah's daughter didn't try to go it alone. She gathered friends around her to help her carry the load of her grief. And actually, there are 2 lessons here. One for the mourner, and one for those friends who are called in to be supporters for those who mourn. As a support person for someone who is grieving, the job is not to provide answers. There weren't any answers, not really, for Jephthah's daughter. So it's not to provide answers. It's not to solve the problem. It's not to heal the hurt. The job is to grieve with the person who grieves. Oh, how we want to make everything all better. But that's not the job. The job is to grieve. Jephthah's daughter teaches us to grieve in community. Lesson 4. Allow God to be in control. Unlike her father, who did his best to be in control by making a vow, the daughter knew that her chaos was in God's hands. Here are my clues. She returned at the end of those 2 months. She could have fled, seeking refuge among other people. She could have chosen to take her own life, sparing herself the weight and death at another's hands. She could have returned but refused to be her father's willing sacrifice. But I sense in the daughter's return a willingness to trust God, the one who heard her cries of grief as she roamed those mountains for 2 months. Jephthah's daughter placed control in God's hands and trusted God with the results. And though she remains nameless and childless, God took care of the specific grief that she named. Her personhood lives on today as we remember her story. Her personhood lives on because the fact that she existed is recorded in the Bible. Her personhood lives on in a way that likely would not have been possible had she given birth to a child, because I doubt that her story would have been given space in the book of Judges had the story ended differently. When we trust God with our grief, the results often go far beyond anything we could have imagined or brought about by our own power. Thank you, Jephthah's daughter, for the lessons you teach. Thank you for teaching us to name our hurt. Thank you for demonstrating the need to grieve. Thank you for showing us how to grieve in community. And thank you for living the hardest lesson of all, to trust God with the results. Today, we have 2 ways that you can come to God in trust. We will be offering both anointing and communion. You may come for either one, for both, or not come at all. The choice is totally yours. When we come for anointing, we are coming with a trusting heart, asking for God's touch upon our lives. You may want to come today with a hurt that you have identified, asking for God's healing touch upon your hurt. When we receive communion, we are trusting in Jesus, Jesus who knew hurt, who knew grief, Jesus whose heart is for all the peoples of the world, for all of creation. Jesus who said, "Take and eat. This is a symbol of my body given for you, and I am here for you. Take and drink. This cup is a symbol of my blood. I did this for love." Jesus who said, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest." I'd like to just make a quick note to those who are joining us online today. If you would like to join us in communion, please feel free to gather up whatever you have at hand. It can be water or milk. It doesn't need to be grape juice. It can be whatever you have. And the same goes for the bread. If you have crackers or cake, maybe your morning donut, that would also work. Sorry, folks, not donuts for you. Would you join me in number 471 in Voices Together? These are some more of Jesus' words that we're going to listen to now. I'll read the light if you will read the dark. So in Voices Together, number 471. This is John 6, verses 30 to 35. The crowd said to Jesus, "You must show us more miracles if you want us to believe you are the Messiah. Give us bread every day as our ancestors had while they journeyed through the wilderness. As the scriptures say, Moses gave them bread from heaven.